Hi, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvellously well. Today in lesson 7, I'm going to talk about plugin basics. This is just the basic overview of plugins. So we'll talk about the various different types of plugins and how you can use them and how they work. Please, as ever, leave questions and comments below, and let's have a great discussion on how you use plugins, what you use them for, and we'll have some fun with it. Okay, and please subscribe. Go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list, and you'll get a free drum samples. You'll get some files to download to edit drums on. You'll get access to the Vimeo account. And of course, you'll get notified of all the competitions that we're running. For instance, at this moment, there's a mix competition where you can win a Phoenix EQ, a DRS EQ, and there's always tons of other fun stuff. So please sign up at producelikeapro.com, and I appreciate you watching. So let's have a quick conversation about plugins. Okay, so I've got a session open here just so I can talk about it. I would say the most commonly used plugin, of course, is going to be an EQ plugin. Now, in my session here, I've got an REQ4, and I've got this on a kick drum sample. And let me just loop a little bit, and I'll show you what I've done and how you can do it. So. I mean, you already heard quite a difference. There's a kick there on its own. Now put the EQ in. What I'm doing is I'm boosting 60 Hertz here. So let's turn off the other EQs. Turn it off. You hear it's doing quite a lot. So what the EQ is doing there, and what you'll use EQ a lot for, is boosting the fundamental part of the sound that you're trying to exaggerate. Now, obviously, I exaggerated it a lot there, so you have to go quite so crazy. Another thing I'm doing is cutting some 350. Now, what that's doing is getting rid of some of that kind of low-mid thump that I don't want. So just kind of muddiness. It's another thing about 350 is it's a lot where some of the low mids on the guitars are that I like, and a lot of the low mids on the bass. So it's kind of cool to cut it out of the drums where you don't need it, so you can hear it more in other instruments. So you can cut frequencies there. Obviously, we can find things we don't like this. So you could take your EQ and boost it. See how horrible that is? It's good if you want that kind of kick drum sound. It's kind of fun to do this. Move it around. See what you can do with the EQ. See, here's 2.5. Around here. I like that. So that's why I'm boosting it there. That gives us a little bit of the mallet hitting the head. So you can see what you can do by boosting EQ. So let's go back to 350 on that. Which is pretty horrible. It's like this kind of nosiness. Let's just pull that out. And let's boost it back to the 60. Put our 2.5 back on. Before, after, a little bit more weight, a little less low mids. I might widen this a little bit. Lackadaisical, a little bit more rock. Cool. So you can see what EQ is doing there, and what it's doing is finding the fundamental on a note and boosting it, taking out some of those low mid woolliness we don't need, and adding a bit of click back. So that's kind of what I like to do with EQ on a kick. Now let's find a different instrument to see what we can do with EQ. Let's find something totally different. Let's go. Let's use an acoustic guitar or electric guitar. What do we have here? Let's see what this one is. So that's a heavy guitar, obviously. It's a good tone. It's a really good tone. It's a big muff, believe it or not. Big muff pedal. What I'm doing is I'm boosting a lot of low mids here. See here? I'm also cutting, and the thing about cutting is I'm actually using a high pass filter here. I don't need any of the super lows because it's just mud. It all adds in, creates a lot of mud. That's too much, but you see what it's doing? It's narrowing it down. It's adding the bass. It's completely out of the way of the bass, but thin sounding. It's nice. They're sort of blending nicely together now. The high mids here at 4.3. Gives it a bit of grit, a little aggression on it. I'm also boosting some 5K at the very top. Too much? Offensive? If this was the only guitar on the track, I might do that just to really give it some grit. But it's not the only guitar, so 4. Little middly. Good guitar sound. But what I like about that is it gives me the girth, the lows, so you can really get in there and exaggerate some of the raw on the guitar and then the aggression on the top. So I mean, EQ is pretty useful. I mean, obviously, if you're overly doing it and you're using it really drastically, then I'd probably re-record the sound. You know, if that's the problem. What I'm doing here is a very grunge sounding track, so I wanted, like, you know, a lot of the grunge bands use big muff pedals and distortion pedals and weren't using the amp so much, and I like that, but that's why I used the big muff pedal on it. Okay, cool. Now, other fun things you can do with EQs. If we go to the lead vocal, you'll see there's quite a lot of stuff on the vocal bus. Let's just take a little piece of the vocal here.
Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psych.
A little bit of air here you can add.
Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sherry's myopic.
I'm using this REQ here just to roll off 100 Hertz and below. I could have done that on the other one as well. There's a little bit of nasalness on this particular vocal, and nasally to me usually is about the 600-700 area, so I'm pulling that off, pulling that out.
Sherry's myopic, but he's fun.
That's really hollow sounding.
Psychotic.
But if I boost it,
Sherry's myopic,
like this,
but he's fun and psychotic.
So a little cut. Again, what I would do is if you're not quite sure where something isn't quite sounding right, have some fun with it. Just do this. Boost.
Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic.
See there how middly that is?
Sherry's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sherry.
And I'm adding some more air over the top. So all I did was just pull out a little bit of that kind of nasalness. So there's not a huge amount of EQ going on there. It's more a little bit of compression, and a little bit of top end boost, some low roll off, and then a little bit of correctional EQ, getting rid of those lows, those low mids, kind of that middle area of nasalness. So there's a basic overview on EQs. Now, you can get a little bit more involved. If we another version of EQ would be a multiband compressor, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so next, obviously, and we can stick on the vocal, would be compression. Now I've got quite a lot of levels of compression going on. I like to use a few rather than one and not use it too aggressively. So here's my first compressor is actually on the vocal itself, the lead vocal track, and it's the Yarvox, sorry.
Sure, he's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. Sure, he's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic.
So there's a little bit of vocal discrepancy in volume because sure is myopic, but he's fun and psychotic. I'm exaggerating for effect, but that middle line is just a little bit lost. So we're going to compress the top of the two lines either side of it.
Sure, he's myopic, but he's fun and psychotic.
So what's happening is just bringing down the level of the first line and the third line just a little bit, and then allowing the middle one to just pop out a little bit. So that's the subtle amount of compression. I'm using that on the vocal itself there. Here I've got a little Renaissance compressor that I like.
Sure, he's myopic, but...
Now I'm using the ratio very, very subtly there. I'm just using it about 2 to 1. Now what that means is every time it goes 2 dB over 0, it only lets 1 through. So if I was to get really, really aggressive and pull the ratio up here to 50 to 1.
Sure, he's myopic, but he's fun and...
It literally needs to be 50 above to let 1 dB go through. So that's really dramatic. So, but at 2 to 1, I'm using it very subtly. I'm using it just to control just a little bit.
Sure, he's myopic, but he...
See, the thing is, all these different compressors have different sounds. And I do really like the Arvox, but I don't like it when it's too aggressive. So I'm using it again after that, believe it or not.
Sure, he's my...
I like a lot of compressors like this. The great thing about plugins are plug-in compressors is they make all different types, some based on real compressors, like a Bomb Factory does an 1176 one, and you have a variable attack and release. We'll do more discussion on compressors later. We'll do a whole series just on compressors. But the reason why I like a lot of these compressors is they're quick and easy to move. I mean, here I am. I'm mixing in a hybrid system through a console, and I'm mixing a session using plugins. So I like to be able to move quickly and get different sounds. That's the reason why sometimes I favor different compressors. And, you know, bearing in mind that I'm also using a little bit of compression at times on the SSL. So, you know, it's for me, it's best to use things that are easy to use, quick to use, and get results, rather than sitting there and playing with something for absolutely ever. Because some compressors, and I know most hardware compressors, some hardware compressors, literally, you have to spend an hour trying to get them to sound good. You know, they have one setting, like they're great at crushing. The great thing about plugins is you've got a lot of variation here, and you can really do some fun stuff. So that's compressor basics on vocals. We can hear it on bass as well. Let's just take a little bit of a loop of the bass. Here I'm just using a DI.
Such a...
But I duplicated the DI to do some fun stuff. I'll show you that in a second. So as far as the compression on this is concerned, I'm using the Renaissance Bass, which is an amazing tool, which basically is like a multi-band compressor. It's bringing in some more low end, but I actually use a multi-band at the front. This is what I'm using for compression. It's an NV2. It's basically a parallel compressor in a box. It is genius. There are different parallel compression stuff. What this does is this literally takes the lowest signal and pushes it up, and takes the highest signal and pushes it down. The way that parallel compression does is it does a very similar thing, because you compress the signal very heavily and evenly and pull it up underneath so it's always there. This is a parallel compressor in a plugin. I really, really like it. There's probably other manufacturers that make it, so look for this kind of thing. But this is very useful, especially on bass. See what it's doing there? It's pushing up the signal here and compressing it down the top. If I take it off, still good. It's a good little tool. So that's basically what I'm using on compression on the bass. as you can see, I recorded the DI pretty compressed going in, so it's quite even. You know, I did this DI a long time ago. Recorded this DI a long time ago on a precision. Okay, so we've done EQ and basic compression. Let's see what other fun things there are. I think the next two probably that you're going to use on day-to-day is going to be reverb and delays. A quick overview on reverb. Okay, so we'll take the vocal here.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun.
Okay, so you can hear a lot of things going on here. Now I have a plate simulation. Again, it's a Waves one. I don't always use the Waves one. The Digidesign one, sorry, the Avid one is actually really good as well. But you see, I have a plate here. Let's turn everything off but that so you can hear it. Okay, so here's just the plate.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun. Such a perfect life.
The thing about this plate that's really good, and most of these reverbs have this kind of thing now, is you see you can adjust the EQ of the verb. So I'm keeping it dark, so it just kind of like adds some presence in the real sense of the word. It makes it feel like there's something else going on there, but without all the extra top. It's pretty big. It's set to 2.4, about 2.5 seconds. It's a large room. And, you know, this is important to me because I'm running it on a separate bus or auxiliary, so it has to be on 100% wet. If you put it on the vocal itself, of course, you can bring it down and blend it. However, I like to do that because then my lead vocal remains constant and I can adjust, as you can see, all these different volume rides of where the reverb is getting bigger. See, it's less in the verses, increasing the pre-chorus, and then cranks up quite considerably in the chorus. So there's lots of different reverbs. Another reverb I'm using here is a tiled room, as I call it. It's basically the same reverb, but it's the same company, but it's a lot shorter.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun.
So I might favor that in the verse, just so it feels like the singer is in the room with you, and then push the plate one, the larger one, in the choruses. Again, there's a couple of fun things here. The pre-delay is basically where you start hearing the reverb. Quite often I'll have no pre-delay and have it right there, so it just feels like, whoa, I mean, she's in a cave. But here you see I've got a short time and a pretty long pre-delay.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun.
Okay, great. Now delays on the vocal here. I've got a few delays.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun.
What I'm doing here, and I've explained this in other videos, I'm actually using a compressor across it and sidechaining. But I can take that off so you can see it.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun.
So I'm actually running that at the same tempo of the song, so it's 65 BPM, and I've got the mix set to 100 again, so I can adjust the volume of the delays. I really like Echo Boy. I mean, you have a lot of different sounds and stuff you can do with it, but it's a great plugin. And then I'm running another delay, the same thing. Here, this one's a quarter note delay. And then last but no means least, I've actually got Decapitator running here for some distortion with a tape delay after it. Now the real tape delay is what comes with, you know, you get it with Avid these days. It's pretty darn good. I do really like it. So let's have a listen. You'll hear it. So there's a distorted signal going into it.
Such a perfect life out there in the sun.
Cranking it.
Such a perfect life. I hope you're having fun. You bet.
So I've got a taste of that underneath, just a slap delay, like a really short delay with distorted signal going into it, just to give it some grit and grind. It's a really tasty effect. Okay, so there's some brief overview of delays and reverbs and how I use them. The only other thing I could talk about is like multiband compression while we're here. We could do a whole video on multiband compression, and we may well do that. But just this is our brief overview of plugins, and it's really so we can have a discussion about stuff. Okay, so if we go back to our bass, you'll see me using a multiband compressor on that. Okay, so this is a multiband now. The reason why I like multiband compression is this. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 250 hertz and below and compressing it. You might say, why am I compressing 250 and below? Well, I'm compressing it so that there's no peaks. But what it's really doing is evening it out. And then I'm turning it up 6 dB. So what I'm really doing is making it even. So 250 hertz and below on the bass guitar now is pretty much staying at the same volume the whole time. So no matter where I'm playing, whether I'm playing a low note like I was there or whether I play high, you still feel that 250 hertz. It doesn't disappear. And I say 250 hertz and below. So that's what a multiband compressor is doing there. You'll see it's bypass, bypass, bypass. It's compressing specific frequencies. Now, you can use multiband compressions in many different ways. You have to be careful. I tend to use it on very one-dimensional issues, like low end on bass guitars. If you get really carried away across the whole mix, it can make your mix louder because it can sit there and compress all of the elements of the mix evenly so you can turn it up. But what may happen then is that you end up with a mix that just sounds dreadful because everything's evenly at the same level and everything's super, super loud, but it doesn't sound musical because things aren't designed to all necessarily be heard at an even level of all times. So you've got to be careful with it. It is a good tool for fixing things, and in this instance, I love it because what I'm doing here is I'm just compressing the low end, the low mids and the lows. Cool. So that's a really quick overview of plugins. If you're watching these lessons in order from 1 to 7 here, I'm just trying to give you like a little grasp of what compressors and delays and reverbs and EQs do. We'll get into in a further lessons just specifically working on an EQ or specifically working on a compressor or delays, effects, etc. But this is more of an overview for those of you that are first, discovering plugins. But please, as ever, leave some questions, leave some comments. Would love to have some dialogue. I love people talking about different things. I learned so much just from doing lessons recently. I've learned so much from people having their opinion on what they use and how they use their plugins to create the similar things that we do. So thanks very much for watching. And please, as ever, subscribe. Go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get some free goodies. And thanks for watching.